Hello friends of TV Agro. My name is Alejandro Rodriguez. I am a biologist and I work in the biological collections of the Javeriana University. Today we will take a tour of these places in the company of professors and researchers. We will learn why they are such valuable and important places for Colombia and the world. In Javeriana we have 3 biological collections: the Natural History Museum, where we have different types of animals such as mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, among others. The herbarium, where we have collections of plants and fungi, and finally the collection of microorganisms, where we have bacteria, viruses, yeasts and other very small organisms. Biological collections are part of the nation's natural heritage, and it is here where national and international researchers, every day, carry out different investigations and discover new species, some that can potentially become extinct or disappear. They help us understand the role of these organisms in the ecosystem, that is, if they are pollinators or what type of benefits they bring to the ecosystem, and they also help us learn about organisms that can affect our health, that of our crops and other types of animals. Today we are at the Javeriana Natural History Museum, and Professor Thiago Pinto is going to tell us about the fish collection, one of the largest collections in the country.
Hola amigos de TV Agro, yo soy Thiago Pinto.
Hello friends of TV Agro. I am Thiago Pinto and I am a professor in the biology department at the Javeriana University. Today we are going to talk a little about the ichthyology collection, but do you know what this is? Ichthyology is basically the science that works with fish, with diversity and with all aspects of fish biology. Then I will show you the collection of the Javeriana Museum of Ichthyology, which is a quite important collection at the national and international level. The collection has about 17,000 lots. But what is a lot? A lot is a jar that contains a record of a species from somewhere in Colombia. The collection focuses on freshwater pieces, so I think that 90% of the collection will have freshwater fish and fish from all regions of Colombia, but mainly the Orinoco and Amazon basins. In our research we basically work on the questions that we asked or ask in our academic practice, that is, what are the fish? Where are they? And why are they in the places where they are? This science that asks these questions about where the fish are is called biogeography. We are interested in knowing why the fish are in the places where we find them. Biological collections have a very great importance for the study of biodiversity because the collections are basically libraries of biodiversity. So we have a fairly large repository of information about the diversity of Colombia in various sites. A clear use of this is conservation. If one wants to conserve a species, the first thing you have to do is get to know them and know where they are. These bugs in the collections bring very important information to know where the species are and for this to start the conservation plans for them. In addition to the importance in conservation, biological collections have other relevant aspects. For example, these specimens are a point of information about the ecosystems at the time they were collected.
Punto de información de los ecossistemas em el momento que foram coletados. Então, además da informação sobre que espécies são.
In addition to the information about what species they are and where they are, they bring information about the parasites that are associated with these fish. Some types of diseases can provide information about what they eat, when they reproduce, among others. For this reason and many other things, collections are very important, because in addition to knowing where the species are, they bring information on relevant biological aspects associated with them.
Creo que muchos de ustedes deben conocer pocos tipos de peces, ¿no?
I think that many of you must know a few types of fish such as cacama, trout, or mojara. Here in Colombia we have more than 1,600 species of fish, and we see many of these species represented here. That is why we say that there is a very great diversity here. Colombia is the second largest country in terms of fish species richness in the world. So we see some of those species here that perhaps many of you know. An example of this is the piranha, the cucas, the rays, the bocachico, an enormous diversity of species in Colombia that we have represented here in the Javeriana fish collection.
Los peces que están en la colección de Javeriana se quedan preservados.
The fish that are in the collection of this university were preserved in 70% alcohol, and the idea is that they will be preserved there forever. In addition to having each species here, a small tissue sample is taken, basically a muscle sample that is used for DNA studies. With these DNA studies we can answer many other research questions about these fish.
Now Professor Lucas Barrientos is going to tell us about the collection of amphibians and reptiles. I know that for many this may seem scary, but they are very important organisms to maintain the health of our ecosystems.
Hola amigos de TV Agro.
Hello friends of TV Agro. I am Lucas Barrientos and I am a professor of amphibians and reptiles. I am also curator of the collection of amphibians and reptiles at the Javeriana University. Among the things we have here, it is a large number of specimens. We have more or less 10,000 amphibians and about 2,000 reptiles.
Dentro de ellos, la gente normalmente piensa en anfibios.
Among them, people normally think that amphibians are only frogs, but we have other types of amphibians. We also have the so-called caecilius, which some people confuse with snakes, and they are legless organisms that live underground and are quite rare. We also have our salamanders. Here we have salamanders that are relatively small organisms, and just like frogs and caecilius, have naked skin, that is, they are organisms that breathe through the skin. In fact, our salamanders do not have lungs and are very important in our ecosystems because they eat a large number of small microorganisms and insects, therefore.
Pequeños microorganismos, pequeños insectos.
They are pest controllers and also transform them into energy to make food for a large number of other animals themselves.
De animales. Dentro de nuestra colección tenemos.
Within our collection we have many interesting specimens. We have species that are being described, for example, some called glass frogs. They are called that because they are transparent underneath. In life they are green and they live in our ravines, in the gallery forests, and they are quite susceptible to environmental disturbance and destruction.
Del medio ambiente, pero también tenemos especies introducidas.
We also have introduced species, for example, the so-called bullfrog, which is a fairly large animal. It was brought to the country, more or less in the 70s, for the purpose of producing meat for food.
Para alimentación, desafortunadamente, pues, esos ensayos no funcionaron.
But unfortunately those tests did not work. Some specimens escaped, and at this time it is an invasive species that eats many other animals and needs to be controlled.
Necesita ser controlada. Animales como que come desde otros anfibios, come.
This frog can eat other amphibians, reptiles, mice, birds, among others, meaning that it can really eat almost everything there is. At this moment, our research is mainly focused on working on amphibian evolution and also on understanding our diversity.
También entender nuestra diversidad, entonces entender qué tenemos, qué especies hay, dónde están.
The idea is to understand what we have, what species there are, where they are, if necessary, also describe the species that are not yet recognized by science, and we do analyses using part of their characteristics, their morphology, but also genetic data to be able to understand their evolutionary relationships, know which species are siblings, when they evolved where, and how we can contrast that with patterns. For example, conservation, or how the different environments where they live are found.
Encuentran los diferentes ambientes donde ellas viven.
Esperamos que les haya gustado.
We hope you liked this tour of the biological collections. We hope you were surprised and amazed by part of the Colombian biodiversity. Therefore, we invite you to follow us on our social networks and contact us through our email. See you in a next chance.